Prince Andrew isn't just disgraced, he's radioactive. While the world focused on his Epstein connections, they missed the real story. This man was already the monarchy's biggest embarrassment decades before Jeffrey Epstein entered the picture. From Chinese spy scandals that rocked 2024 to the tragic death of his main accuser in 2025, Andrew has managed to sink even lower than anyone thought possible. The palace walls can't protect him anymore. His own family won't even speak to him. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Prince Andrew has become the most hated royal in modern history. Long before anyone knew Jeffrey Epstein's name, Prince Andrew was already Britain's most embarrassing royal. The 1980s and 90s weren't kind to the Queen's second son, and frankly, he deserved every brutal headline. While Princess Diana captivated the world with her compassion, Andrew was busy earning nicknames that would haunt him forever. Randy Andy wasn't just tabloid gossip, it was a warning nobody heeded. The stories were absolutely wild. After his divorce from Sarah Ferguson, reports surfaced that he still enjoyed her company for the most degrading reasons imaginable. Friends whispered that Andrew had a twisted obsession with modeling Sarah's underwear. Not romantic roleplay, genuine humiliation that revealed his disturbed psychology. The man who should have been representing British dignity was instead parading around in lingerie like some middle-aged pervert desperate for attention. But the underwear fetish was just the beginning. Andrew's treatment of palace staff became legendary for all the wrong reasons. Former employees described a man so entitled and cruel that he made other royals look humble. He screamed at footmen if his tea wasn't the perfect temperature. He threw violent tantrums when his teddy bears weren't arranged exactly right on his bed. Yes, teddy bears. A grown man in his 40s having meltdowns over stuffed animals while servants scrambled to avoid his wrath. The Air Miles Andy nickname stuck because of his shameless abuse of taxpayer money. While ordinary Brits struggled through recessions, Andrew jetted around the world on private flights, staying in luxury resorts and acting like a billionaire playboy. Every photo of him stepping off another private jet fueled public anger. He wasn't just wasting money, he was flaunting it with breathtaking arrogance. His romantic life became an international joke. The press exposed his fling with model Caprice, who allegedly humiliated him by making him parade around her apartment in women's clothing. Instead of discreet affairs, Andrew's conquests became public spectacles that shredded whatever dignity he had left. He courted celebrities like Courtney Love and chased models who later denied anything serious ever happened. Even before Epstein, Andrew was proof that privilege could breed complete moral bankruptcy. His behavior with women, his cruelty to staff, his wasteful spending, it painted a picture of a man fundamentally rotten to his core. The public already despised him. The Epstein scandal didn't destroy Prince Andrew's reputation. It simply confirmed what everyone already knew about the Queen's most shameful son. While Andrew played the role of Britain's trade envoy, he was actually building something far more sinister, a network of relationships with some of the world's most dangerous characters. His official position was supposed to boost Britain's economy abroad. Instead, Andrew turned it into a personal shopping trip for influence, money, and power. The guest list at Andrew's parties read like a rogues gallery of international corruption. He cozied up to Muammar Gaddafi's son, taking private trips funded by Kazakh oligarchs accused of massive corruption. Arms dealers, oil tycoons, and ex-KGB billionaires all found their way into Andrew's inner circle. These weren't chance encounters, they were calculated relationships designed to enrich the prince while he hid behind diplomatic immunity. Officials in Whitehall were horrified by what they witnessed. Diplomatic cables later revealed through WikiLeaks painted Andrew as arrogant, rude, and openly dismissive of government corruption investigations. During official meetings, he defended shady contracts and swore at anyone who questioned his questionable business partners. He thought his royal status made him untouchable. In reality, he sounded like a drunken fool to every serious leader in the room. The money trail was impossible to ignore. Andrew's official royal allowance couldn't possibly cover his lifestyle of designer clothes, golf trips, and luxury yachts. The cash had to come from somewhere, and investigative journalists started connecting the dots. Gold cufflinks from oligarchs, expensive watches from arms dealers, and mysterious payments that funded his extravagant lifestyle. Every gift represented a debt, and those debts would eventually come due. His business ties became so toxic that even the palace couldn't defend them. Andrew was photographed with dictators' sons, oil executives accused of environmental destruction, and financiers linked to money laundering operations. Each photo was another nail in his reputation's coffin. Britain's trade envoy wasn't promoting British values, he was selling access to the royal family to the highest bidder. The most damaging revelation was how easily Andrew could be bought. Intelligence reports suggested that foreign governments saw him as a useful idiot, someone so desperate for validation and money that he'd compromise national security for the right price. His addiction to luxury and status made him the perfect target for manipulation. By the mid-2000s, Andrew's business empire had become an international embarrassment. Every deal raised questions about corruption, every relationship suggested compromise, and every photo opportunity looked like a transaction. The man meant to represent British excellence abroad had instead become a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked privilege and moral bankruptcy. The introduction of Ghislaine Maxwell into Andrew's life wasn't random. It was orchestrated. Maxwell, daughter of disgraced media tycoon Robert Maxwell, had a gift for identifying powerful men with weaknesses. In Prince Andrew, she found the perfect mark. Desperate for validation, addicted to luxury, and completely lacking in judgment. Maxwell's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity. She offered Andrew access to an exclusive world of private islands, luxury jets, and influential connections. For a man already obsessed with status and wealth, it was irresistible bait. Through Maxwell, Andrew met Jeffrey Epstein, the mysterious financier whose unlimited resources and high-profile friends perfectly matched Andrew's inflated sense of self-importance. The famous photograph tells the entire story in a single frame. Virginia Giuffre, barely 17, standing with Andrew's arm wrapped around her bare waist, while Maxwell grins menacingly in the background. That image, taken in Maxwell's London townhouse in March 2001, would become one of the most infamous royal photographs in history. It wasn't just evidence of Andrew's presence, it was proof of his participation in something truly evil. Giuffre's allegations were devastating in their detail. She claimed Epstein and Maxwell trafficked her to Andrew 3 times, in London, New York, and the Virgin Islands. Her descriptions were specific, personal, and absolutely damning. She remembered Andrew's behavior, his requests, and the casual way he treated her like a commodity rather than a human being. These weren't vague accusations, they were detailed testimonies from someone who lived through hell. Even after Epstein's first conviction for abusing a minor, Andrew maintained the friendship. Photos surfaced of them walking together in Central Park in 2010, long after any decent person would have cut all ties. When confronted about this relationship, Andrew's response was chilling in its selfishness. He called it convenient to stay at Epstein's houses because of their locations. Convenience over conscience, that was Andrew's moral compass. The network around Epstein provided perfect cover for Andrew's worst impulses. Private islands where anything was possible, jets that crossed international borders without scrutiny, and a culture of absolute secrecy protected by unlimited wealth. For Andrew, it must have felt like paradise, a world where his royal status meant he could indulge any desire without consequences. But paradise always has a price. The connections Andrew made through Maxwell and Epstein would eventually destroy everything he claimed to value. His reputation, his royal duties, his family relationships, all sacrificed for access to a world that promised unlimited pleasure but delivered only shame and disgrace. November 2019 marked the moment Prince Andrew went from scandal-ridden royal to international laughingstock. His BBC Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis was supposed to clear his name and restore his reputation. Instead, it delivered one of the most catastrophic public relations disasters in modern history. Andrew's preparation for the interview revealed his fundamental delusion. Against all advice from palace communications experts, he believed he could charm his way out of the Epstein allegations. His arrogance convinced him that his royal status and smooth talking would make the scandal disappear. He was spectacularly wrong. The excuses Andrew offered became instant global memes. When confronted with Gorsov's claim that he was sweaty during their alleged encounter, Andrew's response defied belief. He claimed he couldn't sweat due to a medical condition caused by adrenaline during the Falklands War. The medical community immediately debunked this absurd claim, but the damage was done. "I don't sweat" became a punchline that followed him everywhere. Even more ridiculous was his alibi for the night in question. Andrew claimed he couldn't have been with Gorsov because he was at a Pizza Express in Woking with his daughter. Pizza Express. The future king's brother was using a chain restaurant as his alibi for avoiding criminal allegations. The specificity was meant to sound convincing, but instead highlighted how desperate and rehearsed his denials had become. His body language during the interview betrayed his guilt more than any words could. Andrew appeared nervous, sweaty, ironically, and completely disconnected from the gravity of the allegations. When discussing his friendship with a convicted pedophile, he showed no remorse, no understanding of how his association appeared, and no empathy for Epstein's victims. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Social media exploded with memes mocking his sweating claims and Pizza Express alibi. Comedy shows had weeks of material handed to them on a silver platter. More importantly, his sponsors immediately abandoned him. Charities severed their connections, business partners fled, and even his own family distanced themselves from the wreckage. Within days of the interview, Buckingham Palace announced that Andrew would step back from public duties. For the first time in modern royal history, a senior prince was publicly stripped of his role due to scandal. The interview that was supposed to save him instead delivered the final blow to his royal career. One of his own advisors described watching the interview as a car crash in slow motion. But car crashes end quickly. Andrew's humiliation would last forever, replayed endlessly online as a masterclass in how privilege and arrogance can destroy a person completely. Just when everyone thought Andrew had hit rock bottom, December 2024 brought a scandal that made his previous controversies look like minor embarrassments. The revelation of his ties to Yang Tengbo, an alleged Chinese spy, proved that Andrew's capacity for catastrophic judgment knew no bounds. Yang Tengbo wasn't just any businessman, he was a sophisticated operative who had cultivated what British courts described as an unusual degree of trust with the Queen's second son. For nearly 2 decades, Yang had worked his way into the heart of the British establishment, using Andrew as his golden ticket to access the highest levels of government and society. The relationship was far more intimate than anyone initially realized. Yang didn't just attend Andrew's events, he was authorized to act on the prince's behalf during business meetings with potential Chinese investors. This meant a suspected foreign agent was essentially representing British royalty in commercial negotiations. Yang was even invited to Andrew's 60th birthday party in 2020, cementing his position in the prince's inner circle. British intelligence agencies had been tracking Yang since 2021, when he was first stopped and questioned at UK borders. MI5 concluded that Yang posed a direct threat to national security, leading to his eventual ban from entering Britain. Yet Andrew continued the relationship, either oblivious to the security implications or simply not caring about anything beyond his own interests. The photographs were damning. Yang appeared at ribbon-cutting ceremonies with Andrew, posed with former Prime Ministers David Cameron and Theresa May, and was prominently featured in official Chinese state media as proof of his high-level British connections. Every photo was evidence of how deeply Chinese intelligence had penetrated the British establishment through Andrew's reckless networking. Andrew's response to the scandal followed his usual pattern of denial and deflection. His office claimed he ceased all contact with Yang after concerns were raised, but the damage was irreversible. Here was proof that Andrew would befriend literally anyone if they offered him business opportunities or enhanced his sense of importance. The timing couldn't have been worse. As tensions between Britain and China reached new heights, Andrew's connection to an alleged spy became a national security embarrassment. Politicians from all parties condemned his judgment, and even his own family was reportedly furious at his latest scandal. The Chinese spy revelation forced Andrew to skip Christmas at Sandringham in 2024, marking his complete isolation from royal life. It was a fitting end to the year for a man who had spent decades proving that no amount of privilege could compensate for catastrophically poor judgment and moral bankruptcy. April 25, 2025, brought news that would forever seal Prince Andrew's fate in the darkest possible way. Virginia Giuffre, the woman who had courageously fought for justice against both Jeffrey Epstein and Andrew himself, died by suicide at her farm in Western Australia. She was just 41 years old. Giuffre's death represented more than personal tragedy. It marked the end of any possibility that Andrew could ever rehabilitate his reputation. The woman who had forced him to step back from royal duties, who had pursued him through the courts and secured a multi-million-pound settlement, was gone. With her death, public sympathy would forever lie with the victim, not the accused. The circumstances surrounding her final months were heartbreaking. Giuffre had been battling through a difficult divorce and custody fight for her 3 children. Just weeks before her death, she had posted on Instagram about a serious car accident that left her hospitalized and fighting for her life. The toll of years spent fighting powerful predators had clearly taken a devastating psychological cost. Her family's statement captured the magnitude of what the world had lost. Virginia was a fierce warrior in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking. She was the light that lifted so many survivors. Other Epstein victims credited Giuffre with giving them the courage to speak out. Her advocacy work through organizations like SOAR had helped countless abuse survivors find their voices. For Andrew, Giuffre's death eliminated any chance of moving beyond the scandal that had defined his later life. The infamous photograph of him with his arm around her teenage waist would now forever be associated with a woman who had endured unimaginable trauma and ultimately couldn't bear the weight of that suffering. No statement from Andrew could ameliorate this devastating chapter of royal history. The contrast between their legacies became stark and permanent. Giuffre would be remembered as a courageous survivor who fought for justice despite facing powerful enemies. Andrew would be remembered as the privileged prince who showed no empathy, claimed he couldn't sweat, and used Pizza Express as an alibi. Andrew's friends indicated he would make no comment on Giuffre's death, a wise decision since any statement would only deepen his disgrace. But his silence spoke volumes about a man who had never shown genuine remorse for the pain his actions had caused. With Giuffre's tragic death, Andrew's name became irrevocably tarnished with a stigma that would follow him for life. He was finished, and everyone knew it. By 2025, Prince Andrew had achieved something remarkable. He had become more toxic than anyone thought possible. His transformation from the Queen's favorite son to the monarchy's greatest liability was complete, and there was no path back to redemption. The financial reality of his exile was particularly humiliating for a man obsessed with luxury. King Charles had cut off Andrew's annual allowance, forcing him into a desperate battle to maintain his lifestyle. The 30-room royal lodge, once a symbol of his privileged status, had become a financial millstone, requiring hundreds of thousands in annual maintenance that Andrew simply couldn't afford. Reports surfaced of unpaid debts, shady business deals, and a man reduced to selling assets just to survive. The prince, who had once jetted around the world as Air Miles Andy, was now dependent on handouts and struggling to pay basic bills. His attempts to find alternative income sources only generated more scandal, as every business connection raised questions about potential security risks. The isolation within his own family was perhaps the cruelest punishment. Prince William and King Charles were reported to view Andrew as an active threat to the monarchy's future. William allegedly called him a danger to the family, while Charles believed his brother's arrogance had jeopardized the crown itself. Their contempt wasn't hidden. It leaked regularly to the press, making clear that Andrew wasn't just sidelined but actively despised. Even Andrew's rare public appearances became exercises in humiliation. When he attended Easter service in 2025, it marked his first family appearance since the Chinese spy scandal. But instead of rehabilitation, it only reminded everyone of his pariah status. Crowds no longer cheered for royalty. They shouted abuse at the prince they saw as a symbol of everything wrong with privilege and power. Perhaps most pathetically, Andrew reportedly continued to believe he could stage a comeback. Leaks from his diminishing circle suggested he still hoped for rehabilitation and a return to public service. But every attempt to test the waters was met with outrage and renewed focus on his scandals. The monarchy had moved on without him. The public had moved on without him. Only Andrew refused to accept that his story was over. He remained trapped in Royal Lodge, a broken man clinging to the remnants of a privilege that no longer protected him. For a monarchy built on image and tradition, Andrew had become the stain that would never wash out, proof that even royal blood couldn't shield someone from the consequences of a lifetime spent choosing greed, arrogance, and moral bankruptcy over basic human decency.